can go and set that. Normally, if you have your instrument connected to the network, the instrument will actually automatically get the time and date from the network or from your computer. If you need to go and set the date and time, I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Also on the top bar of the instrument software, it will show you your battery life, or if you're plugged in, it will show you how close you are to having the batteries fully charged. So you can see in my situation, I am plugged in, and that's why I have this battery indicator with a squiggle indicating that I have the instrument plugged in, and I am at 99% charged. So in just a little bit, my batteries will be fully charged. Since you just plugged in your batteries, it may take a little while until your batteries are fully charged. If you unplug, and you don't need to do this since you're charging the batteries, but I will go ahead and you'll notice how that connector changes. So now instead of the battery with a squiggle, I have a battery with a life indicator, and it tells me about how much charge I have left. And again, you can see I have about 99% charge. This is one of the things that you can edit of the instrument and set it to your personal preference. Right now, my instrument is set to indicate percentage of battery life. If you'd rather, you can actually switch that and have it show you the time your battery has left, which may be more useful in practical purposes. And I'll show you how to switch that in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and plug my instrument back in so it fully charges my batteries for me. You see that indicator and change back to the battery indicator. Okay. When you first turn on the instrument, you should be in the startup page, and the very first page you should be on is the chamber setup. Chamber setup has some important information for you. The first thing, and for my particular instrument, I have the fluorometer chamber, so it's indicating that here. It also shows me the serial number of my fluorometer, as well as the serial number of your fluorometer is located on the bottom of the chamber. There's a yellow number, which should match the serial number displayed on your startup page. Okay. There are various processors in this is something helpful to understand. There is a little computer chip up inside the chamber, the base of the sensor head, and there's also a computer processor in the console. So there's various places where we actually can have different software versions, as well as different serial numbers. And so by default, we remember all of that for your instrument. So the nice thing is, if you wanted to another lab, you don't have to give them, it will auto this chamber and read all of that information into the console. Similarly, the sensor head can actually be interchanged. So you could loan your sensor head to someone else to use on their console. And again, all of the information for the analyzers is kept in the sensor head. exchange those, but if maybe something happened, someone needed to send back their sensor head for repair, you could loan the sensor head from someone else and be able to, so it's nice that you can interchange those. Okay, so we do have a few questions on the front page. It will ask you which aperture is installed. And if you recall, that's this particular aperture. We have the 6 square centimeter aperture installed right now. But if you switch to the smaller leaf area, then you do have to tell the instrument that you are using a different aperture. We also have another chamber that uses the fluorometer. And so if you are attaching the fluorometer to that chamber, you would also need to tell the instrument that you're using a different chamber. However, I mean, by default, it's going to remember which selection you had last time. So if I put in my 2 square centimeter aperture, I told the instrument I was using that one, I took measurements, and then I turned off the instrument. The next day when I turn it on, you will notice that it remembers how you had it set. So if I had set it for 2 square centimeters, it's going to continue to be set to 2 square centimeters. So that is nice that it remembers what you were using the day before. But aperture is something that you do have to manually tell the instrument. There's no way for us to know which aperture you have installed in your chamber. The next option we can choose is whether we want the fluorometer to act as a fluorometer or whether we just want it to act as a light source. If you treat it as a fluorometer, you are going to get all of your fluorescence functions. Elizabeth gave you an introduction to what some of those measurements are. And you will have on the console as well as they appear in your data file. So if you have no interest in taking fluorescence measurements, then you may opt to use the second option, which is just to set the as a light source. And then you will not have those extra parameters in your measurement screen, and you won't have extra columns in your data file. So it's really up to you. I'm going to, for now, keep it set as a full fluorometer. So we get familiar with taking both gas exchange and fluorescence measurements. The next option isn't really applicable to this chamber, but there are some chambers where you have some other calculation options, and you'll see that pop up when you have that chamber attached. The last option here on the left-hand side is called dynamic equations. And this is actually a new method that scientists from LICOR have come up with. And it actually allows us to calculate photosynthesis and transpiration in when your leaf is not at steady state yet, or when the chamber conditions are not at steady state yet. Enabling us to take, for instance, CO2 response curves. We're able to take a CO2 response curve in 1/3 of the time that you normally would use if you were waiting for steady state. We're not going to spend much time going over that in this training course. If you have questions and would like some more information, we will have some extra time on to talk about dynamic assimilation more at that time. But for now, go ahead and make sure that that box is not checked. We don't want that. And maybe switch some things around. And you really wanted to return the instrument to a state that it would have been in when you just purchased the instrument. We have an option here called Load Factory. And what that will do is it'll reset the displays, it'll reset the configuration, kind of everything that you could customize. It would reset all of that to how that can be useful, you know, if multiple people use the instrument and you just want to start from scratch. You can use that button to read in all of the beginning settings. Okay, so that's really your chamber setup. The second page in this tab is called Configuration. And I won't spend a lot of time here, but just to let you know that you can configure the instrument the way you like. And you can set up the instrument so that everything loads ready to go for a particular experiment. So if you have certain parameters that you want to look at on a page or certain graphs that you want set up for an experiment, you could customize all of those things and save it as a configuration. So you can see on my instrument here, I have a couple different configurations that I have loaded or saved on my instrument. And it will allow me to be able to quickly use my instrument in exactly the same settings as I was using it previously. So this could be really useful for experiments that may last over several days. You can have the instrument automatically set up the same way every day, which makes it really useful. The next item down is connections. This is not terribly useful other than it allows you to see which your serial number of your sensor head, as well as the software version of your sensor head. And if you are having trouble connecting to your instrument, you can actually see the details of your instrument. Because I am on the LightCore network, I'm seeing a lot of different instruments that are connected. So I need to scroll to find my sensor head. Okay. And then I can view the details of the sensor head, and it will tell me my serial number. It will show you my IP address, as well as some various information, some different software that I have in my instrument. Okay. The next page down in the startup tab is your warm-up and system tests. This is something you will use every day. There are a list of automated tests that we like everyone to go through when they're using the instrument. It exercises the system and does some automated checks of everything. And when finished, it will tell you if anything needs attention. And this is something that we'll spend some time doing tomorrow. The next item down is your calibrations. Calibrations is something you do not do very often. If there was a test, warm-up test run, and it told you some sensor needed attention, some of the things that may have to be done are here in the calibrations tab. And we'll go through that a little bit in more detail later in the course. Place for new users to go, and it's called the data dictionary. And the data dictionary is a list of all of the variables in your instrument. It lists the title, what group you can find that variable in, what the units of that variable are. And if